When I discovered that small recording device in my husband's car, I never imagined it would lead me to uncover the most shocking betrayal of my life. What I found on that device didn't just destroy my marriage, it exposed a conspiracy that had been brewing right under my nose for months. But by the time I was done, justice would be served in the most public and humiliating way possible. I was sitting in my kitchen, the morning light filtering through lace curtains that had hung there for 20 years. The silence felt different that day, heavier somehow, like the air before a thunderstorm. My husband Marcus had left early for another one of his urgent client meetings, but something about his rushed departure nagged at me. The way he avoided eye contact, the nervous fidgeting with his wedding ring, the faint scent of expensive perfume that definitely wasn't mine lingering on his jacket. Marcus returned home that evening looking exhausted, but not the kind of tired that comes from honest work. His face carried the weight of secrets, and when he collapsed onto our bed without even removing his shoes, I knew something fundamental had shifted in our marriage. As his snoring filled the house, I began what would become my nightly ritual of detective work. I started in his study, methodically searching through papers and files. Hidden beneath a stack of old tax returns, I found bank statements for an account I'd never seen before. Expensive restaurant charges, hotel bills, jewelry purchases, all for amounts that made my stomach turn. But it was the small electronic device tucked behind his computer that changed everything. It was a digital recorder, still warm from recent use. My hands trembling, I pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room, but he wasn't alone. The woman's voice that responded made my blood freeze. It was Sarah, my own sister, laughing intimately as they discussed their afternoon at a downtown hotel. But worse than the affair itself were their plans for my bakery business. "She's so trusting," Sarah's voice dripped with contempt. "Juliana still thinks I'm helping her expand the business out of sisterly love. She has no idea I've been copying all her supplier contracts and client lists." Marcus chuckled. "And she definitely doesn't know about the loan documents she signed last month. Once we transfer ownership through those papers, we can sell everything and disappear together." I sat in that chair for what felt like hours, listening to them plot the destruction of everything I'd built over the past 15 years. My bakery wasn't just a business, it was my life's work. My escape from a troubled childhood. My proof that I could create something beautiful in this world. And now my own husband and sister were conspiring to steal it all. The next morning, I made coffee with hands that barely shook. I'd spent the night planning, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. When Marcus stumbled into the kitchen, I greeted him with my usual smile. "How was your meeting yesterday?" I asked, setting his favorite mug in front of him. "Oh, same old boring client stuff," he lied smoothly. "Actually, I need to travel to Dallas this weekend for another business dinner." I nodded sympathetically while my mind raced. Dallas. The same lie he'd told when the recorder revealed he'd actually spent the weekend with Sarah at a resort 2 hours away. After Marcus left for work, I called my friend Elena, a paralegal who specialized in business law. Without revealing too much, I asked her about protecting business assets and what documentation I'd need if someone was trying to commit fraud. Her advice was thorough and precise. Gather evidence, document everything, and be prepared to act quickly. That afternoon, I visited Detective Rivera, an old friend from high school who now worked in the fraud division. I brought copies of the bank statements and played portions of the recording where Marcus and Sarah discuss forging my signature on transfer documents. "Juliana," Rivera said grimly, "what they're planning is serious fraud, but we need them to actually attempt the crime before we can arrest them. Are you willing to help us catch them in the act?" I didn't hesitate. "Tell me what I need to do." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would pretend to take a business trip to visit potential new suppliers, giving Marcus and Sarah the perfect opportunity to execute their plan. Meanwhile, Rivera would have surveillance teams ready, and I would wear a wire to record any conversations. Over the next week, I played my part perfectly. I mentioned to Marcus how I'd been thinking about expanding to include a second location, how I might need to sign some new partnership agreements. His eyes lit up with barely concealed excitement. "That sounds wonderful, honey," he said, his voice thick with false enthusiasm. "Maybe I can help review any contracts before you sign them?" Would you? That would be such a relief, I replied, fighting the urge to throw my coffee in his face. I also had a carefully orchestrated conversation with Sarah, mentioning how overwhelmed I felt with all the business paperwork and how grateful I was for her help organizing my files. She practically purred with satisfaction, no doubt thinking about how much easier I was making their theft. The day before my supposed trip, I packed my bags in full view of Marcus, chattering about visiting suppliers in Phoenix. That evening, he made a show of being disappointed that I'd be gone for 3 days. "I'll miss you," he said, kissing my forehead with lips that had been kissing my sister. "Drive carefully." Instead of driving to Phoenix, I checked into a hotel 15 minutes from our house. Detective Rivera's team was already in position, with cameras set up to monitor my house and the bakery. I spent a sleepless night in that sterile hotel room, alternating between rage and heartbreak. At 8 a.m. the next morning, Rivera called. "They're on the move. Sarah just arrived at your house." Through the surveillance equipment, I watched my sister enter my home with a briefcase and laptop. She moved through my house like she owned it, which I suppose she thought she soon would. Marcus emerged from the bedroom looking relaxed and confident. "Did you bring everything?" His voice came through clearly on the recording device. "All the transfer documents, the forged loan papers, and the updated partnership agreements that make me majority owner," Sarah replied. "Once we get these notarized using her stolen identification, we can liquidate everything within 60 days. They spread papers across my dining room table, the same table where we'd shared countless family dinners, where Sarah had cried on my shoulder after her divorce, where I'd helped her children with homework. Now she was using it as a staging area to destroy my life. The beauty of this plan," Marcus continued, "is that even when she comes back and discovers what we've done, it'll be too late. The transfers will be legal and binding. And if she tries to fight it in court, we'll be long gone," Sarah added with a laugh that made my skin crawl. "Amazing how easy it is to manipulate someone who trusts you completely." That was when Rivera gave the signal. Police cars surrounded the house as officers with a warrant burst through the front door. I watched through the surveillance feed as Marcus and Sarah's faces went from confident to terrified in seconds. "What's happening?" Sarah screamed as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and theft," the lead officer announced. "You have the right to remain silent." I drove home just as they were being loaded into separate police cars. The neighbors had come out to watch the spectacle, their faces showing a mixture of shock and curiosity. Mrs. Peterson from next door approached me with wide eyes. "Juliana, what's happening?" "They arrested Marcus and Sarah." "I know," I said quietly, watching the police cars disappear down the street. "I'm the one who turned them in." The story spread through our small town like wildfire. By evening, everyone knew that Marcus and Sarah had been caught red-handed trying to steal my business. The local newspaper ran a front-page story about the sister scandal, complete with photos from their arrest. At the police station, I formally identified all the forged documents and provided additional evidence I'd gathered. Detective Rivera informed me that based on the amount they'd attempted to steal, Marcus and Sarah were facing serious felony charges that could result in years in prison. "They've both requested to speak with you," Rivera said. "You're under no obligation to see them." I thought about it for a moment. "I'll see Sarah first." My sister looked smaller somehow, sitting in that sterile interrogation room in her orange jumpsuit. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared from crying. When I entered, she immediately started sobbing. "Juliana, please, I can explain everything. Marcus manipulated me, convinced me that you owed me something because you've always been more successful. I was desperate after the divorce, and he promised we could all share the business profits." I sat down across from her, my voice steady and cold. "Sarah, I heard everything. I know exactly how much you hate me, how you've always resented my success. You called me naive and trusting, remember? You were right about the trusting part." Her tears stopped abruptly. "You recorded us?" "Every word. Including the part where you laughed about how easy it was to manipulate me." I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I hoped the money was worth destroying our family. Marcus's conversation was shorter. He tried to blame midlife crisis, financial pressure, even claimed he was planning to surprise me with a bigger bakery once the deal went through. I listened to his lies with detached amusement. 15 years, Marcus. 15 years I gave you, and this is how you repay me. Juliana, please, we can work this out. I'll make it right. You're going to prison, I said simply. There's nothing to work out. The trial took place 6 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. Recorded confessions, forged documents, financial records showing Marcus had been stealing from our joint accounts for over a year. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that she was coerced, but the recordings clearly showed her as an eager participant. I testified for 2 days, detailing how I discovered their plan and worked with police to expose them. The prosecutor painted a picture of long-term financial abuse and betrayal of trust that had the jury shaking their heads in disgust. When the verdicts came in, Marcus received 5 years in prison for fraud and theft. Sarah got 3 years plus restitution requirements that would keep her financially accountable for the next decade. Neither of them looked at me as they were led away. The aftermath was strange. Some people treated me like a hero for exposing the fraud, while others whispered that I should have tried to work things out privately. I didn't care about their opinions. My bakery was safe, my assets were protected, and most importantly, justice had been served. I reopened the bakery with new security measures and a renewed sense of purpose. Regular customers rallied around me, and business actually improved as word spread about my ordeal. Mrs. Peterson became my unofficial marketing manager, telling everyone who would listen about how I'd outsmarted the people trying to rob me. Elena helped me file for divorce, which was finalized while Marcus was still awaiting trial. Since he was a convicted felon, dividing our assets was straightforward. I kept everything he hadn't already stolen. The hardest part was explaining everything to my teenage daughter, who was away at college during the worst of it. She was devastated about her father, angry at her aunt, but ultimately proud of how I'd handled the situation. "Mom," she said during one of our long phone calls, "I always knew you were strong, but I never realized how brave you were." 6 months after the trial, I was featured in a local business magazine as Entrepreneur of the Year, with a story about how I'd saved my company from fraud while building it into the most successful bakery in the region. The photo showed me standing in front of my expanded shop, wearing the confident smile of someone who had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged stronger. I still think about Marcus and Sarah sometimes, wondering if they ever reflect on what they threw away for money that was never really theirs to take. But mostly, I focus on the future I'm building, surrounded by people who genuinely care about me and the work that brings me joy. The betrayal changed me, there's no denying that. I'm more cautious with my trust, more protective of my business, more aware of the signs that someone might be using me. But I'm also more confident in my ability to handle whatever life throws at me. Sometimes customers ask me how I found the strength to turn in my own family members. The answer is simple. When someone tries to destroy everything you've worked for, you have 2 choices. You can let them succeed or you can fight back with everything you have. I chose to fight and I won. My story spread beyond our small town, shared on social media and picked up by news outlets as an example of how fraud victims can take control of their situations. I received hundreds of messages from people who had faced similar betrayals, thanking me for showing them that justice was possible. These days, I run my bakery with the help of employees I trust completely, people who've proven their loyalty through their actions rather than just their words. I've learned that real family isn't about blood relations, it's about the people who support your dreams instead of trying to steal them. The old me might have been naive enough to believe that love and trust were always rewarded with loyalty. The new me knows better, but I haven't let that make me bitter. I've simply learned to trust wisely while never giving up on the possibility of finding people worthy of that trust. If you've enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's building a life so successful and fulfilling that those who tried to destroy you can only watch from prison cells as you thrive. Please subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength in the most difficult circumstances.